Hello, everybody. This is Gustavo, exam coach. Today we have the third set of practice questions about conjunctions. We'll begin with a brief reminder of the types of conjunctions in written English. We know there are 4 types of conjunctions. The first 3 are used to connect independent clauses, so that we have compound sentences. That is, sentences formed by 2 or more independent clauses put together. We can use coordination conjunctions, correlation conjunctions, or conjunctive adverbs, right? The first type are the conjunctions for and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. Correlation conjunctions are paired expressions such as either, or, neither, nor, not only, but also, etc. And conjunctive adverbs are special words and expressions that we can use to connect independent clauses by means of placing a semicolon and a comma on both sides of these expressions. So we have, for example, however, otherwise, nevertheless, in contrast, etc. Finally, we have a 4th type, subordination conjunctions, that are used to connect an independent clause with 1 or more subordinate clauses, and thus assembling what we call complex sentences in written English. Here we have expressions such as because, if, while, after, etc. All right, today we'll see a set of questions about sentence editing. Let's see the instructions together. One of the underlying parts in each sentence is incorrect. Cross out the incorrect part and write the correction above it. So we see, for example, in the first sentence, which says, not only are rhododendrons known for their dramatic, colorful flowers, and they are also valuable as landscape plants. We see there are 4 parts in this sentence, actually 4 words that have been underlined. One of them is incorrectly placed because it violates the grammar rules for constructing the sentence correctly. So let's examine one at a time, trying to discern which one is the incorrect one. And then let's propose a correction for it. So at the beginning, we see something very interesting, is this not only expression, which is part of our paired conjunction, not only X, but also Y. And we're supposed to see 2 parallel expressions, X and Y, being connected together using this paired conjunction or correlative conjunction. So we're supposed to take a look first at what comes after not only in order to deduce what is the correct form or grammar type for the expression Y. So here, what we can see after not only is, are rhododendrons known for their dramatic, colorful flowers. So that is a clause itself. We have rhododendrons, it's the name of some plant, it's a subject, and then are known as the conjugated verb in passive voice, of course. So what is the type or the grammar type of X? It is a clause. So we are connecting 2 clauses using not only X, but also Y. Let's take a look then at the paired expression for not only, which should be but also. We can see that the second part of this sentence is actually another independent clause. We say, they are also valuable as landscape plants. So this indicates that we need the other part, the match for not only, which is but also. But we can see also, in the place of but, there is this conjunction and. So we infer that it is misplaced, because what should be appearing here, it is but rather than and. In that way, we would have not only X, but also Y, where Y would be the clause, they are valuable as landscape plants. All right, so no need to examine the other alternatives any further because we've pinpointed the correct one. Now, take a look at the 2 other underlying words. Their dramatic, colorful flowers, there is the proper agreement between pronouns and nouns in this phrase. So this is correct. Also, we deduced that are was the correct conjugated verb for rhododendrons. And you also see we are comparing, right? Or using as to express a comparison of rhododendrons and landscape plants. They are valuable as landscape plants. So this is also appropriate here. We just confirmed that the incorrect part was and should be replaced by but. So the correct answer or the correct sentence would be, not only are rhododendrons known for their dramatic, colorful flowers, but they're also valuable as landscape plants. Let's try number 2. In summer, the tiger shark may follow warm water currents as far south as New Zealand or north to Japan, nor the northern United States. So you can see here that the first underlying word sounds reasonable, right? The tiger shark may follow, yeah? It's a modal verb of possibility. Okay, so it's good. Say, follow warm water currents as far south as, yeah, this is appropriate for the comparison and to express the degree of how south water currents take or displace tiger sharks. So, looks fine. It says, as far south as New Zealand or north to Japan, nor the northern United States. Here there's something wrong with this nor, because nor is for joining together two negative concepts or ideas or words or phrases. But nothing is being negated previously in this sentence. So nor doesn't look good. We could say as far south as New Zealand or north to Japan and the northern United States. So better to change this for a conjunction and, in which we're just adding the two expressions. So let's keep going with number 3. The Muses were the 9 Greek goddesses of the arts and sciences. Instead, schools devoted to the study of art and science were called music schools. Now, let's notice here, the first part of this sentence is an independent clause ending just before the semicolon. The Muses were something. Then this conjunctive adverb here is supposed to connect this independent clause 1 with the second independent clause, schools devoted to the study of art and science were called music schools. The schools devoted to the study of art and science were called music schools sounds fine. It's reasonable as an independent clause. A proper agreement between the subject and verb, then we also have the correct number for this conjugated verb were, since it was schools were called, right? So this looks fine, this looks fine. Also looks fine the first underlying word, which is of the arts and sciences. Yeah, it looks correct. So what about instead? Instead is being used to establish the logical relationship between these two parts of this thought, these two clauses. But it doesn't sound reasonable. We are saying when we propose instead that the second thought, the second clause should go in the place of the first, but this doesn't sound reasonable. What is reasonable is to say that the reason why schools were called music schools is actually the fact that the name of the Greek goddesses of the arts and sciences was the Muses. Notice the relationship between muses and music, right? So it should follow a conjunctive adverb, not of replacement, right? Rather, a conjunctive adverb that establishes causality, right? Causality. For example, we could propose here, consequently. Another possibility could be therefore, etc. All right, 2 possibilities to correct this third sentence. Number 4, unlike early capitalism, modern capitalism depends on the state and the government is expected to fight either unemployment and inflation. Okay, notice here at the beginning, there's this formula that we have unlike X, something is said about Y. And so we're comparing early capitalism versus modern capitalism. This is properly placed here. Then said modern capitalism depends on the state. Also correct placement of a conjugated verb. Also agreement between subject and verb. So it looks fine. What about the second? Here is clear that this is an independent clause. Unlike early capitalism, modern capitalism, notice the subject and the conjugated verb. Depends on the state. Then there is a comma and. So correctly placed, the government is expected, here we have another clause, subject, conjugated verb in passive voice, to fight either unemployment and inflation. But here is a problem. We cannot say either X and Y. We only say either X or Y. The correct structure is this. So since we don't find an underlying and here, we deduce that this is incorrect. it should be both instead, because there is another paired structure, both X and Y, which we use to put together two items or concepts. The government is expected to fight both unemployment and inflation. All right, let's keep going with question 5. You can pause the video here so that you can try first on your own. Number 5 says, on the one hand, Earth was lifeless for its first 2 billion years. Otherwise, it was a seething mass of volcanic and geologic activity. Okay, let's focus on the first underline word. Earth was lifeless for its first 2 billion years. Looks fine because we're talking about the past. So this one is okay. Second one looks fine. Then we have otherwise, it was a seething mass of volcanic and geologic activity. Volcanic and geologic activity looks fine as well, but what about otherwise? This conjunctive adverb here is supposed to connect the two independent clauses. On the one hand, Earth was lifeless for its 2 billion years, right? And then it was a seething mass of volcanic and geologic activity. But otherwise, it's not appropriate here. Why? Because every time you use on the one hand, this makes part of one pair expression. On the one hand, X, and then you have on the other hand, Y. So you have this, and this is interesting because it makes otherwise incorrect. It should be on the other hand to make the appropriate contrast. All right, so that's it for number 5. Let's continue with number 6. The baby boomers are the largest generation in recent history. Consequently, they had more impact on the birth rate than did neither the prior or the successive generation. Here, the largest generation looks fine, superlative adjective. Consequently is a conjunctive adverb that establishes consequence, right? Causality. So the baby boomers are the largest generation in recent history is one clause, one independent clause. Then you have they had more impact on the birth rate, etc. So we're saying that the first idea shows the reason for the second, for the situation described in the second idea. So clearly, consequently is correctly placed. We have they had more impact. It's a comparative. So what about the fourth one? It says, than did neither the prior or the successive generation. You cannot use neither together with or. You use neither with nor. Since this one is the underlying and or is not underlying, this one must be wrong. The correct one should be either the prior or the successive generation. Okay, so that's it for number 6. Let's continue with number 7. Examples of minimal art are the structures of such sculptors as Carl Andre, also Donald Judd, as well as the paintings of Frank Stella. Okay, here we need to see something here. That examples of art are the structures. Yeah, looks fine because there's agreement between subject and verb. So this one's correct. We have such sculptors. We use this to exemplify such sculptors as number 1, number 2, etc. So this looks fine. What about the list of sculptors that engage in minimal art? We have Carl Andre, also Donald Judd. We don't use also in this way, but here Carl Andre and Donald Judd are connected together with also. It is not appropriate. We would say as Carl Andre and Donald Judd, as well as the paintings of Frank Stella. Okay, this is therefore the correct answer choice. Correct also for and. Number 8. Many astronomers agreed with Shapley's big galaxy hypothesis. Therefore, others disputed the idea and found it unlikely. Many astronomers looks fine, agreed with looks fine, the preposition is correctly placed to indicate the indirect object of the verb to agree. And it says, therefore, it looks like this is a conjunctive adverb. Notice the syntax. Prior to it, there is a semicolon. After it is a comma. But what about the logical appropriateness of this expression? Take a look at the second idea. Others disputed the idea and found it unlikely. Okay, and is appropriate here since it is connecting two verbal phrases, disputed the idea and found it unlikely, as the conjugated verb of the subject others. So we have like a compound predicate, compound conjugated verb, disputed and found. So looks fine. But what about the logical relationship between the first independent clause here and the second? It looks like there is some kind of contrast between the astronomers mentioned in the first group and the others, the ones mentioned in the second statement. So we need a conjunctive adverb that expresses this contrast, this opposition of the two ideas, the two groups. Therefore, it's not appropriate because it expresses consequence, causality. So we would suggest here something like in contrast, perhaps meanwhile, and some others similar to these expressions that can be placed as conjunctive adverbs to connect to independent clauses. Or perhaps, however, right? That's another possibility. All of these are appropriate to express contrast between two independent clauses. All right, that's it. The set of practice questions I had for you today. In our next and coming video, we'll be seeing another topic, which is a development in more detail, deeper than in any other previous video we've released before, about a treatment of types of subordinate clauses in written English. We'll examine thoroughly noun clauses, adjective clauses, and adverb clauses as they appear and different cases of use of subordinate clauses to make complex sentences in written English. See you on the next video.